Hey, so I was reading the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I was wondering if you got any such thing of that for sports bettors. You got some habits?
I got a few habits for highly successful sports bettors. The number one thing I'd say is they don't chase losses. Chasing losses, as in losing a big bet and then just dumping it on the next thing available without really thinking, is the number one reason people lose money sports betting. Every sports bettor, the smartest of them, and losing sports bettors both have winning days, losing days. The key is you can't chase losses on a losing day. So that's definitely tip number one. Tip number two is avoid parlays as much as possible. So when you place a parlay, the vig, the juice, whatever you want to call it, compounds. So a typical like 10 leg parlay is bad by 50% or so. It is so unprofitable. It's insane that people are putting their money on it. So I would say tip number two is, if you want to be a highly successful sports bettor, or a highly effective habit, as you mentioned in your book, is don't chase losses, don't place parlays. So two, do not do these. Number three is successful sports bettors, effective sports bettors, they're rational, right? They're not a Cowboys fan, so they're betting on the Cowboys, right? They're not just betting on the Lakers and Dodgers every night because they're the sexy LA teams, right? Highly effective sports bettors are very rational, they're very price conscious, and they aren't just betting on a team that they want to watch. Number four is very effective sports bettors, they compare odds. They have multiple sports books. Sportsbooks have different prices, so even though the difference between plus 125 and plus 140 may seem kind of small, you have to put in the work to open up multiple sportsbook accounts and compare odds between books so you can always get the best possible price, right? Like, it's kind of like buying a flight for $200 on Kayak when you could have got it for $150 on Expedia. It just doesn't make sense. You have to be line shopping, as it's called, or comparing odds between books, and have multiple sports books. So a terrible tip that a lot of beginner sports bettors do is they'll just open up one account, DraftKings or FanDuel, and that's all they'll bet with. And that is a surefire way to lose money. Number five, in terms of tips for being a highly effective sports bettor for you, is knowing math, right? Sports betting, it's not, the guy who watches the most sports who makes the most money. It's all about the math, the odds you're getting, right? Nobody knows the future in sports betting. Sports has variance. Nobody knows who's going to win tonight. And there should be a price where you're willing to bet on every team, right? So even if the Warriors are playing, a worse team like the Washington Wizards, underdogs win all the time in sports, and knowing math and understanding when a bet is a good bet and when the Wizards have value versus the Warriors have value is critical, right? Because even though these differences in odds, plus 500 versus plus 400 seem relatively small, they make all the difference in the long run. Then two more tips. I would say successful sports bettors, they bet on numerous sports. You should be betting where the value is. If you're going into sports betting just wanting to bet on baseball, you're just limiting your options pool. Why would you do that, right? If there's a great bet on the UFC, then you should bet on the UFC. If there's a great bet in tennis, bet on tennis. If there's a great player prop bet on the player prop, right? You should always be, looking for the value. Now, the seventh thing I'd say is losing sports bettors, or successful sports bettors, to frame it in a positive way, is they use software, right, to find their bets. The best bets don't last forever. The sports betting market is dynamic. Odds are constantly changing, just like the stock market. So you really need software to be successful. And obviously, the smartest sports bettors are using OddsJam because it's the highest quality, fastest sports betting software on the market. If you're not using it, you're not making as much money. It's really that simple. So those are the 7 habits I have. Don't place a ton of parlays. Don't chase losses. Don't just bet on your favorite team. Line shop, learn math, bet on numerous sports, use OddsJam. That's all I got, 7 tips. Like them?
Absolutely.